Hi, it's Shola here. I'm a public speaking coach based in London. My business is called Speak Up Like a Diva and Speak Up and Shine. And the question I want to ask you today is this. Are you sharing your backstory? No, not the story about, I've got a slipped disc and I'm in dreadful pain at the moment. But the story, the story about what happened behind the scenes, or the struggle, or the pivotal decision that you made that brings you to where you are now. And quite often when we're in a speaking situation or running a workshop or whatever it may be, we don't share enough of that backstory. And it's important because it helps people see the transitions that we've made, and it also helps them to connect with us and understand the position that we're in and where we came from. So it's really important to share that. And I was at a networking event the other day and I was listening to somebody talk about their business. And later on, when I was speaking to that person informally, she shared a little bit about her background and how she'd worked in corporate, but now she runs several networking groups and she's got another business on the side, and etc. And hearing her backstory helped me to put everything into context. And also I had more admiration for her, hearing where she'd come from and what she had now achieved. And quite often it's the missing link in really helping people to connect with us and see the value that we're adding, and understand us when we're making a presentation. So that's why I'm asking this question about sharing your backstory. Now, the important thing is, a backstory doesn't mean take half an hour. I think we've all been on those webinars where on the webinar maybe lasts an hour, and then there's half an hour of somebody talking about their life story from childhood to today, and then there's only sort of 10 minutes left for real content, and then 20 minutes of them selling their self to you and selling their latest product. So when I talk about backstory, I don't mean it has to occupy tons of time. One thing that it could be useful for you to do is to get used to telling that story in, let's say, 30 to 60 seconds. That takes real discipline, and it means you really have to jettison a lot of the stuff that is irrelevant. But it's a wonderful skill to have. I remember a couple of years ago, I was at an assessment day and there were about, I think, 20, 30 people there applying to be speaker trainers for a well-known speaker trainer organisation here in the UK. And one of the things that we had to do was to tell a story with a particular point, and we only had 1 minute to tell that story. And I'm happy to say that of those people, I was one of the 4 people that was selected to actually go through and be one of the speaker trainers for this organisation. And I think one of the reasons that happened was because I was quite disciplined about telling this story. And luckily it's something I'd practiced before, it's something I'd worked on earlier and was able to kind of bring it out, pull it out of the hat in that assessment day. But whatever situation you're in with speaking, it can help to have different versions of the same story. Whether it's the 30-second version, the 1-second version, the 5-minute version, you understand the situations that you need to speak in, but it's worth having different versions so that you can apply them to the right situation. So it's important to tell your story. We sometimes get bored of the detail. We're thinking, oh gosh, I've heard that so many times. I live that. I don't want to share it in that presentation. But we forget that the audience is new to us and we're new to them. They don't know us. And we need to form that connection with them as soon as we can. And quite often that backstory is the way to do it in a really powerful and precise and concise way. So make sure you aren't hiding your backstory away from your audience. And it can be confusing to them if we don't share it. So we might be talking about, when I did X, Y, and Z, and they're thinking, I don't, how did you get there? I don't understand. Another example for me, scratch my nose, is I talk about the fact that I had a corporate career and then I became a professional singer. And because I was the one that lived through those years of, having to decide to move on from corporate and then taking singing lessons and then going from there to being a professional singer, it's like, I understand, I get that, it all happened. But people often say to me, can you explain, how did you go from working as a management consultant to being a professional singer? Well, how did that happen? And it's something I take for granted because I lived through that. So when you are talking about yourself or you're up there delivering a presentation and you refer to some points in your life, don't take for granted too much the steps that you've taken to get to where you are now. Because almost undoubtedly, there'll be somebody in the audience who's thinking, oh, well, how did that happen? And not, as I say, to spend 20 minutes on that, because that's probably not what you're there for. But if you can succinctly tell that story in a sentence or two, hey, I think it all adds to the rounded picture of you, the speaker, and therefore people are more likely to take the next step at the end of your presentation, whether that's to want to work with you or to follow your call to action, whatever that may be. So I hope that makes sense. I want you to know your backstory, to understand how it fits in with your next presentation, and to be okay with telling it in, 2 sentences, a half a minute, maybe 5 minutes even, depending how long you have. Hope that helps. And if you are interested in speaking to grow your business, then why don't you get in touch with me and we'll have a power call to see how I can help you move forward. Take care.